Hello, welcome back to Telltale Books. I'm Greg.
I'm Emily.
That's Saoirse.
This little Saoirse. She's
And,
two and purrs a lot.
Yeah. And we're here to talk this week about a book that I read. Emily didn't.
Yeah.
Shame on her.
I'm gonna get into Dean Koontz, I promise.
I've never read him before. This was my first Dean Koontz book.
Ooh, I like the cover.
Yeah, it's awesome graphic design. Intensity.
I can tell from the cover. All that color vibrates. Real intense.
And I didn't know if I was going to like Koontz or not. He's kind of a poor man's Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably not a nice way of talking about him. He is an excellent writer. He just hasn't achieved the level of fame that King has.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen King has had pretty much a stranglehold on the horror genre, leaving a lot of other authors to be successful, but not so well known. And writing really good books that not a lot of people are still reading. And Koontz is kind of in that category. He's still writing. His most recent book this year was called Quicksilver. I got that one.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't read it yet.
I saw that.
He started out as a science fiction writer.
Oh, interesting.
He was writing straight up science fiction in the late 1960s, publishing it in Galaxy magazine and things like that. And until about 1973, he was writing all science fiction. Mm-hmm. Mostly being published, like I say, in the magazines and in book form. He was getting published in the paperbacks. Mm-hmm. Some ace doubles of his work were published.
Nice.
And wasn't being published in hardcover and wasn't that well known. He didn't become really well known until he switched over to horror. And I think his first book to really stand out was a science fiction horror story called Demon Seed.
Ooh, yes.
That was made into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I got that one and want to read that one of these days. So through the when in the middle of the 1970s, between Stephen King and books like The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby, horror suddenly became a really hot commodity in publishing. And so in the 1980s, you saw this boom of all these different horror novels coming out. And Koontz was kind of at the top of that. He was a prolific writer and writing a lot of the best ones. He doesn't write like H.P. Lovecraft kind of monster horror. Mm-hmm. He mostly writes more thriller type horror, almost along the lines of like names. The big movie with Jodie Foster.
Which one?
The one she won Oscars for, and which is super famous with the moth. Silence of the Lambs.
There it is.
Damn. Okay. A lot of his is kind of along those lines with serial killers and people fighting back. And that describes Intensity, which came out. When did this get published? This was kind of at the very height of his career, I feel. This was published in 1995.
90s.
So through the 80s and 90s, Dean Koontz was a very popular writer, very prolific. His books were selling well, always at the front of the stores. I remember B. Dalton and Walden bookstores always had at least one of his books.
I'm finding his stuff all over the place.
And everywhere. You walk into the used bookstores now and you're going to find a lot of Dean Koontz around.
I mean, you walk into any bookstore and you find a lot of Dean Koontz, I find. Yeah.
And the cool thing is, unlike Stephen King, you can get, this is a first edition, and you can pick them up for like $5 at your local resale shop, because he's not as famous as Stephen King. Stephen King books, at least the earlier famous ones, you can't touch for those prices.
Yeah, not
Dean
for
Koontz,
first edition.
You can. And his books are really, really good. Intensity. Brief synopsis. I'll try to be brief. Try not to spoil. There is a serial killer. The story starts out with these two girls. They're doing a sleepover at her parents' house. So they're in the bedroom, and they hear some noises going on. And the girl that's visiting, she is in a room where she's able to, where the person invading the house doesn't know she's there.
Yeah.
So he comes in, he kills the parents, he ties up this girl's friend and tortures her, has his way with her, ultimately kills her. So this girl's hiding out, witnessing all this stuff, trying to figure out how she can save her friend, which ultimately she fails.
It's like Black Christmas. Goodness.
Yeah. So the serial killer drove up in a travel home.
Oh.
He has a motor home, and he takes the body of the girl out. He's gonna keep this body.
Yeah.
A trophy of what he did. And the other girl stows away in the motorhome.
Oh, interesting.
So now she's in the motorhome. The guy doesn't know she's there, but she can't escape or contact anybody or do anything without facing him. And he's this big, strong guy. He's very muscular, really works out, and he's got weapons, knives and guns and stuff at his disposal. So the rest of the novel is her trying to... She doesn't try to get away. She's trying to bring him to justice or kill him or do something to stop him. She wants to get vengeance for her friend. You know, and meanwhile her friend's body is in the bedroom in this home. Yeah. And she opens the closet and there's another dead body in there.
Oh, great. Of course.
Yeah, and the story gets really complicated and really intense. The serial killer, where the title comes from, is that the serial killer has this philosophy that you have to live as intensely as you can and not allow anything to stop you. Yeah. And so he does what he wants.
Basically like radical individualism. Interesting.
And, you know, so he's all about his whole life being this cat and mouse game with people. And so he really relishes the situation where this girl is actually succeeding at evading him and keeps coming after him and won't go away. And it's this whole
it becomes like a fixation for him.
And a very intense way of living, trying to best one another through this whole thing. Yeah. And I'm sure I'm not doing justice to describing it. It is a really good book, really enjoyable. You're just on the edge of your seat through the whole thing. And fairly long chapters, but he ends each chapter where you just have to keep reading to find out what happened.
He's really good at spacing it out so that you're like, I can't just stop there. That's not his closure point. He constantly
gives you these cliffhangers, and it's like, no matter how tired you are, you got to know what happens next. And there are certain points in the book where you just think, well, why didn't she just drive off?
Yeah. Why
and be done with the whole thing?
In the spine. I don't know.
Yeah.
I always get like that.
Yeah, there are certain points in the book where your disbelief is kind of stretched to the limit, and you think, wait a minute, this girl just is a complete moron.
She's psycho.
For continuing to stay there and try to do something, and instead of driving off and getting help. But there is, she thinks, and it turns out that there really is a girl still alive at this guy's house, and she has to save him, or save her. So she continues to keep herself in this situation to try
in hopes that she's going to do some good at least.
Try and resolve it, because it's way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have a phone. So she can't call anybody, she can't run anywhere, she can't...
can't do anything.
She gets into a car, but then she pursues him instead of driving off and getting help. That was the part that I really had a problem with. I would have driven off and looked for police somewhere. No, she pursues him into a national park. and ultimately ends up wrecking the car and having to stow away in the motorhome again. And now she's trapped again. And, but Koontz does a really good job with dealing with that and keeping her in the game and keeping this whole thing rolling and keeping a momentum to this book that's just amazing. That, like I say, you just get caught up with it and you can't stop.
You just want to keep
going. You can't put it down.
I want answers. I love books like that they're just so compelling. And yes, the whole trick of cliffhangers ending of chapters. I love to hate those and hate to love them. But here we are.
I like chapter endings where I can close the book and go to sleep and read more the next day. This one wouldn't let me do that.
Yeah. That's kind of why I have such a love-hate relationship with them, because it's like, oh, I love that you did that, because it does make the book so compelling. But at the same time, I hate you. Why are you doing this to me?
I need to get up for work in the morning.
Yeah. Some of us have day jobs.
Yeah. So, I haven't read a lot of these types of books. I've never read Silence of the Lambs. I've just recently gotten into Stephen King and Dean Koontz, and I've been looking at other possibilities and wanting to get more into horror and thriller and learn more about the genre. And so this was a pleasant learning experience for me, getting into Dean Koontz, and I want to read more. Excellent. I want to learn more about him.
Yes, I've wanted to as well, because I had that feeling about Stephen King, which I've spoken up before in our videos, where I held off on reading Stephen King just because he was so popular. I felt like he had to be mediocre, and I kind of had the same perception of Dean Koontz. But I really need to start shaking that more and get more involved in reading these authors, because they're good for a reason.
Well, the fact that Dean Koontz kind of took second fiddle to Stephen King for his entire career is what made Koontz is what made me open to trying Koontz when I started to get interested in horror, which was really only a couple of years ago. Because I had that same thing. I mean, for years I didn't watch E.T. because it was so damn popular. I thought, I'm going to hate this. It's going to be this.
Yeah, it's so really overrated. It's going to be overrated.
Kids movie, and it's got to be way overrated. There were a lot of things like Stephen King's another one. I was given novels. Somebody gave me a copy of Carrie and said I should try reading it, and I didn't, precisely because I had never read him, and he had this huge popular reputation, and it just kind of, I don't know, I just expected I would not like it.
Yeah, I had that same perception, because you kind of get this mentality that if something appeals to the average person, it's probably average. And that kind of was always like how I thought of it. Like, plus I was more into fantasy and things too. I was into more fantasy, more sci-fi stuff. So it just didn't appeal to me at first.
And plus being in marketing, we know how a lot of things, a lot of times marketing creates this excitement about something that really isn't very good.
Yeah, it's really not that great.
But they know how to instill excitement about something that people haven't read yet and make them think that they got to have it.
Yes.
And that I kind of have that. I'm not sure I'm right about it, but I kind of have that same feeling with Brandon Sanderson, where he has this colossal reputation and all these people just swooning over him like he's the Beatles or something.
Yeah, and he's good.
Well, but is he that good? That's my question. And I've only read one novella by him so far, and it was good, but it wasn't great.
Yeah, it wasn't something that blew you away.
So I'm still kind of thinking, well, do I really want to try him? Maybe I'm going to be disappointed, because he's got this just ridiculous reputation, and I may find out he's really no better than any other science fiction fantasy writer. So,
why
I'm kind of on
dedicate your
that
time
fence.
To something that's only okay?
Yeah, am I going to like it or am I going to hate it?
Yeah.
Is it all just hype, or is he really that good?
Yeah.
I don't know yet.
And we also have this personal, just because we have so much to read and so much to get through, if we're not into it, we will drop it. We have no problem doing that. Yeah. So why waste time? And that's kind of what we're always worried about, is because we have such a long to-be-read list and things we want to do reviews and videos on, we're trying to do the best of the best. And if we're not finding the best of the best, we're just avoiding it or dropping it. And it's like, start something, find
Well,
it's mediocre.
Plus, part of our mission is to look into those great stories that you haven't heard of.
The best of all time.
And that kind of leaves Brandon Sanderson off to the side somewhere.
Yeah.
Because he's too popular and too well known. He doesn't fit into what we're looking for. You know, we want the Myrtle Reeds. We want the MP Shields.
Yes. People who are really good, fascinating writers who didn't get their spot in the limelight that they should have.
And who may be worth you guys reading. And that's why I want to sing praises of Dean Koontz. He you know, can probably argue back and forth whether he's as good as King. Ultimately, I don't care.
Yeah.
He's a good writer.
I like his
This
stuff.
was an awesome book. And it doesn't matter if he's as good as King or not. He is worth your time to read. And he deserves to kind of come out from under that shadow and be known. I think.
Yep. Well, I'm definitely interested in reading more of his stuff. I actually have some audiobooks I got from a friend of Dean Koontz things. So I was like, ooh, that's something I could do in the evenings. If I'm having a hard time reading, I can at least listen to it. So
yeah, and I just got a hardcover copy, and a nice one of Whispers ordered from one of the online sellers that I like.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah. So that's on its way in the postal system to me.
Book mail. It's always the best. Always a good feeling. Yeah.
Okay, so that's about all I got for that. It's a great read. It's really exciting. There are some things where you kind of go, oh, I don't think somebody would really have done that. But if you overlook those short passages and just keep going with the momentum of the story, you're going to be carried to a great ending of a great book and really enjoy it.
Sounds good.
So try it.
Yeah.
And like us and subscribe.
And we'll see
come
you.
Back.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Say bye, Susha. You say bye-bye?
At least purr.
Oh, she's purring. She didn't stop. She don't stop the purrs.